Okay.
Fabulous. Okay, and here we are for another Friday, another Connect and Share with Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. And thank you to my co-hosts who helped me last week when I wasn't online. Yeah, much appreciated for all the support that you guys give me all the time. So first of all, may I please acknowledge all the traditional owners of the lands of which we meet together today and connect and share as we do every Friday. And I want to pay my respects to the Darug people of the land of which I'm coming to you from today. I need to understand more about the traditions of their knowledge and their understanding of the land so that I can do better and improve my understanding and interpretation of the lands that we work on every day. And I hope that everyone can connect with their local connections and do the same and bring that to life for your visitors and your participants of your activities. So today is the Skills IQ Forum in Parramatta. Unfortunately, I'm not there. It is going without me, but that's because there's a lot going on right now. And yeah, there's some really urgent needs that I need to attend to. But I did record a quick session, which I thought I might share with you today that is going to be aired, which is my update. So you get a bit of a taste of the Skills IQ Forum today. So let me just share with this with you now. Hi everyone, Laurie Mode here, CEO of Outdoors New South Wales and ACT, and thank you for letting me join with you virtually today. Unfortunately, I can't be there in person, but really thank the opportunity to give you a bit of an update on the outdoor industry. As most here would be aware, the outdoor industry is made up of organisations that are not-for-profit, commercial, individual sole traders, and they're all operating in 4 different areas, either recreation, education, therapy or tourism, and they conduct adventurous activities to provide those outcomes. The industry was worth $7.8 billion to the New South Wales economy in 2018, but now has been reduced to a small percentage of its former self. While the industry rebuilds, there's different paces at which the speed of recovery is taking form depending on the area of outcome. Let's start with recreation, probably a newfound friend for some of our new markets as we emerge from lockdown and they seek for more active lifestyles. But our challenges are simply to maintain their interest and service them well and keep demand high while getting back our past clientele. The challenge is met with capacity limitations and in particular staffing. This issue is not unlike some of the other areas I'll talk about, so I'll refer to a more combined context in a little bit. The second area is education, and this is our slowest performer in recovery and iconic when we know that outdoor education is a provider for resilient skills, leadership skills, gets our youth away from screens and back to nature, and improves our mental health and well-being. The slow return is not due to lack of demand. In fact, it can't be any more demand as our schools are hoping to catch up on the time that's been lost, keep the opportunities in the limited school time they have with the kids, and even look at bringing multiple groups into these opportunities at one time. The New South Wales Department of Health have recommended a policy to the Department of Education that restricts government schools from attending overnight education camps. And this at the moment is for the foreseeable future. I think there is a perceived risk there that is not actual. We have been trying to educate the department on the lesser risks associated with the outdoor education camp environment and the COVID-safe plans that are in place to limit the transmission of COVID between our children. Overnight camps make up 91% of the education facilities businesses, and now they fear business failure as government stops the grants being provided to business. We continue to have this discussion as we move closer to term 1. And if we cannot get back to camp in normally what is our busiest term of the year, we risk not having an industry for term 2 and beyond. Grants have ceased, jobs have been lost, fixed costs on empty facilities don't stop from having to be paid. We hope to have a pathway to return from the government really soon and some financial assistance to keep them here until that happens. The next sector is tourism. And as we know, as regional travel started, it came back with vigour. And Again, this area of the market saw a return to adventurous activities with enthusiasm, like recreation. The challenge, again, is keeping the momentum and having the capacity to deliver. Much of this sector is small business, so they weather the storm well on the leadership roles, but where the gap is in skilled casuals to provide the services. The final area of our industry is the therapy area. A small part of our industry, but a growing one as we've come out of some of the most challenging times we've had in our lifetime. Outdoor therapy is conducted by medical practitioners in most cases and work with NDIS clients, people with mental health challenges, or others wanting to discover more about themselves using the natural environment. The challenge here is more about working with the government land managers and private landholders to gain access to amenities and facilities that require effective conduction of their work. So by this, you might have already gathered our significant shortfall is around staff and qualified staff. You see, there's not one person that can lead an adventurous activity without holding an advanced first aid certificate or an activity attainment in things like kayaking, climbing or canyoning or whatever activity they're leading. But in most cases, employers need a Cert 3 in outdoor leadership. What was 76,000 staff in 2019, reduced by 45% in 2020, and now reduced by 77%. Just under 18,000 of those staff are left. Lost due to no work, skilled workers left and went home overseas, or simply the industry showed it was vulnerable against the current climate and people searching for more secure work. The education sector is taking the hardest hit due to the current government policy which is in place. They are down to skeleton staff, and as grants have ceased, will further be reduced before school returns in 2022 if there's no financial assistance. We know we need to make up the shortfall of these staff as demand is increasing, and plus the COVID inflation, which is more people wanting to get out and active and back to healthy lifestyles. So we're estimating that potentially we have 60,000 jobs that need filling, but they need qualifications, because it's the qualifications that provide our services and prevent people from getting injured on our adventurous activities. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of the meeting, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully that was shown this morning, and yeah, there's going to be some great opportunity to have the discussions about how we improve access to our training and certainly provide what we need to get back to the sector. Happy to take any comments or questions, but we'll keep moving because we've got a fabulous speaker today. So needless to say, Cam's advocacy from that recording is probably big on the agenda, and hence why I need to dash at 10:30 today. We've had more exposure. We wrote the open letter this week, which has had incredible attraction and attention to it. I urge everyone on this line, if you haven't shared it amongst your networks, please do so. We need to get this certainly out there and a lot broader in its connections. We've reached 10,000 people so far. My goal is 25,000. So let's see if we can share that around and really get some focus on that. It's on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And if you want the paper version or the digital paper version, let me know and I'll certainly share that with you as well. But meetings continue, lots of meetings today, and hopefully we'll get some more news to you over the weekend. It was also in Australian Leisure magazine as of last night as well. So getting some good traction with our advocacy. The Regional Industry Education Partnerships, better known as RIP, which is the Department of Education's area. They're helping us trying to get some more understanding of careers in the outdoors with school leavers. And we have our session 2 on Monday. And thank you to all of those organisations listed there who are partaking in this. If your organisation is not listed there and you want to be part of this, I urge you to contact Leslie ASAP so I can get the agenda to you as well as I send it out to all of those people today. It will be on Monday night, 7 p.m. via Zoom. And yeah, it'll be a great opportunity to showcase what jobs you have on offer to some of these people looking to get into the industry. If you want to actually register and just attend, you can do so by scanning that QR code. So if you like, I can either leave it on screen for a bit or just message Leslie or myself and we'll send you the link. Collective Leisure, one of our wonderful members, has got a sportability club which they've formed, and the first showcase of this is at Auburn Basketball Centre on the 19th of December from 12 to 1:30. It is a Sunday afternoon, and it's going to be multi-sport, all wellbeing activities in specific to the young people with a disability aged between 5 and 18. What a fabulous program this is. The actual program will continue in 2022 on a regular basis in a weekly club from the 6th of February. So very similar to our youth resilience program, which we're looking to put into mainstream schools. David and his team are doing this with kids with a disability. So this is a great program, as I say, and well done to David and his team. Quick update from us. Needless to say, you've probably heard too much on the advocacy, so we'll jump on to other things. We've got our master class planning going for early next year. We're building our website tools, and we've got some case studies being developed for your use at the moment. The mentoring program will kick off in March, which is great news, and our workforce development opportunities with the Department of Ed continue. So if you have reached out to them, no doubt you're already meeting with them to understand how you can get your jobs filled. We've got the trail bike discussion paper now in draft, so close to be able to release that for you so you can actually see what we're trying to achieve with our trail bike subcommittee. And don't forget, if you're a mountain biker, we need your information for the mountain bike survey. So if you could please jump onto that link and tell us where the issues are for you in mountain biking right now. Perfect timing as the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife release their cycling strategy for consultation. So this is certainly very much needed so the subcommittee can respond. And of course, the other subcommittee work that goes with the risk and incident response group, as well as our climate change working group, which are doing some great things. So from the demand side, we've got a marketing program that we're looking at for 2022, and obviously amongst all of you who stretched the deadline to the 12th minute of the 12th hour. So at 12:55 yesterday, I think I heard all of you submitted your grants for the Office of Sport Marketing grant, but got it in before the 1 p.m. deadline, which is great. So what I really want to try to do with those who are successful with those grants, we need to work together to build that voice. So we urge everyone that is notified to be successful to tell us so that we can help you leverage that activity and broaden your reach. So great stuff as we come into 2022 and get that demand happening again. The website area for members is under construction, so very soon you're going to have your own access within the website. Social media profile, no doubt with the advocacy we've been doing, has been building, and that's great news. And we've got a lot more activity on LinkedIn and Twitter as a result. Awareness in the careers opportunities, certainly with the work in the outdoors pages has been great. And again, more case studies are being developed in that area. And of course, the program that Helen's running, which is the Youth Resilience Program, now known as AOK. Active Outdoor Kids. So great little acronym there as we develop that program and get that into the schools in term 1, 2022. Organisational growth. Yes, obviously we are trying to get our company limited all solidified, taking a little bit of time. I'm sure COVID's got a bit to play with that, but hopefully that'll be confirmed soon. And our membership is certainly growing, and we need to continue that growth to build our voice, particularly as we're still conquering a lot of issues around insurance and compliance and the advocacy work. The power of the voice is where we certainly benefit. So if you know people that aren't members of our organisation, tell them to come on board. You know, they can join as little as $110 and be part of that community. And great to see that we're starting to really build our local council partnerships so that they can leverage the outdoors for their own economic and community benefits. and some more strategic alliances, which we're discussing as we get into next year. But enough of me, you've heard me enough. I'm going to hand over to Dan, who is going to share with us a little bit about how the defence interacts with the outdoor industry. So Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. You're on mute at the moment, darling.
Thanks, Laurie. I'm just going to try and share my screen again, as you taught me to do before this.
That's great.
System works?
Yeah. All good.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for having me, Laurie, and all on board. And Hugh, thanks for reaching out and asking me to give a bit of a talk on my experiences with adventurous training in the military. I guess quick background on me. I was 14 years in the military from about 2006. That included a couple of trips to Afghanistan in 2010 and 2012. And then I guess based on that and some of the training I did in the lead up that focused on resilience training and things like that, I thought that there was actually an opportunity for Defence to do a little bit more in that space and have a stronger tie utilising adventurous training to prepare soldiers for operations, as per you'll see is the aim of adventurous training. I just didn't feel I got a chance to do that on the mass prior to deploying. And so then I started angling. So back in 2012, 2013, I started angling for a job in this space and worked my way to the adventurous training wing in 2016, where I did a year as the 2IC, or basically an operations officer or program manager, I guess. And then I took over command and leadership of the adventurous training wing for 2017, 2018. And so the adventurous training wing is kind of the governing body for Defence for adventurous training. It's responsible for managing and sustaining the capability. So not so much on the delivery side or the guiding side. It's actually the instructor and training people in accordance with the requirements that we need them, not necessarily to a Cert 3, Cert 4, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. I've done a bit of very rudimentary traffic light system competency mapping, I guess, because we in the military we mapped what we needed and cut away a lot of stuff relating to the Cert 4 outdoor leadership, for instance, that our soldiers get elsewhere in training. So we didn't need to revisit it on a roping and climbing course or a kayaking course, but what we did instead is we came up with prerequisites that they had to come to us with, which we could be assured that they'd done certain leadership training. So what I want to do, enough of that, what I want to get into, I'll cover probably one of the key differences I'll bring out at the start. Won't be across the board. It's a bit of a generalization, but yeah, then cover some of what the similarities and differences are, what it actually looks like in the military, and then I'll talk a bit about what Defence personnel can potentially bring to the outdoor space in a wider sense, we'll go from there. So I guess the key difference I wanted to hone in on is the difference between sort of outdoor recreation and the way we use it in the military. And I just grabbed this off Outdoors New South Wales and ACT and had a look at the definition there, had a look at the broad disciplines that are used within outdoor recreation in New South Wales and ACT, and that there's a lot there, and rightly so. And I've grabbed a few photos and paid credit to them. I've tried to anyway, for organisations around Australia, which is that come and have some fun and pictures of people enjoying themselves and all the rest of it. And as we know, there's great opportunities and there's great benefits out of this sort of training, but it's not the selling pitch in the military, and it's not kind of the way we want to use it. If it was to be aligned closer to something in out there in the general public, I would think of it more along the objectives of education, of stuff like the Resilience AOK program and whatnot. However, it's not, mostly in the military, it's not used as a rebuilding phase. It's more of a preventative preparation for operations and challenges that will come in the future. So a quick look at what it is then. So the way, instead of those smiling faces there, which would be deemed as probably success for a lot of outdoor recreation activities, our success looks a lot more like these two photos. And we're not scared of, we're not worried about tears or balking or the amount of time we have to spend with participants. It's about putting them in situations, and then we don't just leave them there. We then teach them how to deal with that, reflect on it, and do multiple day activities to basically achieve the aim there, which is to enhance the Australian soldiers' ability to thrive in circumstances of complexity and adversity. And that's that's why we do it. We want to basically bridge the gap between all the technical training the military does, and then actually being able to do it when somebody's shooting at you, because at the end of the day, we can't shoot at them in training. It's frowned upon. And so we need to find another circumstance where we can actually get them into a situation where they feel what fear is like. They feel stressed, and they actually come up with a appropriate coping mechanism that can be then reflected on and generalized to other circumstances, so that hopefully when they do get shot at, they remember all the excellent training that they've had in other aspects to basically, you know, at the simplest form, get cover behind a building and be able to operate their rifle in a way that is actually beneficial to the team. As I sort of spoke about before, the ATW's mission is not on the delivery side. ATW was there to manage, to be the whole of military governance and sustainment through training of guides and instructors within a military context. Cool. So to give you, I was going to speak to the discipline. So this isn't that other disciplines couldn't be used, like was outlined on that outdoor recreation slide. I guess the military narrowed it down to the disciplines you see there for a number of reasons. One's with regards to, I guess, sustainability. The military can't afford to have every bit of equipment in a Q store, so it has to be narrowed down at some point, just from a sustainment point of view, on what we can maintain and how many qualifications and all the rest of it. But these were also the ones that were identified that could achieve the best outcomes. So when we're looking at developing teamwork, leadership, resilience, courage, determination, it was identified that through these we could achieve all the outcomes that we were seeking, for probably the most cost-effective solution. So a number of factors came into it, but it needed to be narrowed down, and that's where it landed. Cool. Right. We'll try and share another screen with you now. And I've just got to go through about 3 minutes of this video, just looking at you know, what it actually looks like in a military context, and then hopefully enjoy it, and then we can talk more after that.
Great video, Dan.
Awesome. Hope you hope everyone got a bit out of that. Damien Allen's put that one together for me. Have you ever had anything to do with him, Hugh? I'm not sure. He's on the water side of things, but
yeah, I've been fortunate to work with him a couple of times.
Yeah, he's good value. So that's just a bit of an indication. Before I go into and keeping that in mind for the next slide when I talk about similarities and differences, I'll just talk about sort of adventurous training and really what makes it in Defence's eyes adventurous training as opposed to a recreational activity. So I guess the first three things are having a front load, which is basically having having an activity objective. So what do we want to achieve out of it? So is that resilience, is it leadership, and being really clear about what you are trying to achieve, because the activity number two there needs to be actually designed to meet that objective. So if you're trying to develop teamwork and all you do is a single person abseiling off a cliff, for instance, with no actual other team aspects applied to it, then you mightn't actually be developing teamwork at all. If that looks like rafting might be a bit better one for teamwork, for instance. You're actually all steering the same ship, or maybe backcountry ski alpine survival. Great one for teamwork and leadership, actually still being able to operate within the cold. The cold really finds people out. So yeah, it's about picking the right discipline to meet and the way the activity is actually organized to meet that. We talk about simple stuff as well around it, that if you're trying to develop teamwork, then the ration plan or the food plan probably shouldn't involve Army's individual ration packs. You can actually do a barbecue or group cooking or 5-person ration pack. So your whole activity design should actually meet the activity objectives. And then obviously most importantly, which I dare say plenty of familiar with, is the debrief afterwards. And it must have a debrief. It must have all three components. The debrief's actually got to be debriefed in accordance with the objective. So if the objective is resilience or leadership, then the debrief should focus on what aspects, did we see good leadership, good resilience, poor examples? What did we do about that? How did we respond? What will we do in the future? The debrief shouldn't go on tangents. Then if the objectives are resilience and leadership, we shouldn't be really focusing in on teamwork and courage and initiative, because that actually wasn't the point of the activity. If the front load's done right, then the debrief and the activity meets the objective, then your debrief should actually flow really well. And because people have actually been thinking about what they were there to achieve all day, and the activity's done its job of bringing those points out, and then your debrief sort of runs itself as long as you keep it on track. The piece on I'll go to the experiential learning cycle first there, which probably isn't new to anyone. It's about going through that whole process so that we're not just running an adventurous training activity that can just end up resulting in fun, but it's actually a useful tool that gets utilized to prepare people for battle. And so that takes a bit of facilitation. So the experimentation piece, obviously, we just saw in the video. The reflection piece, we focus heavily on the debrief in accordance with objectives, and using the pieces on the right as a basis, which are only 4 of many, but coping mechanisms that they may or may not have used or could use if they weren't happy with their response to being terrified. So we teach them how to use those, but then the generalization part is really, and applying is really important for us, because generalization is trying to get them to identify themselves, not tell them, but identify and other areas where the same thing that they've used or the same lesson they've learned could be applied within their wider responsibilities as a soldier or officer in the military. And then applying is obviously actually using it in that scenario. And for us, as I've already pointed out, at the extreme end of things, we want them to be able to use, at a minimum, these 4 coping mechanisms, or whatever they found that works for them when they're getting shot at, or when they're in a situation that they have not seen before, but they can lean on the last time that they felt that scared. Cool. So some of the differences and similarities. So from the top, it's in both columns. So you will see military out there in the same training areas. So similar training areas in the Blue Mountains, up on the Tully River. If you're ever up Queensland Way, throughout, there'll be sea kayaking around Sydney Harbour, down at sort of Point Perpendicular Way. So they're around in the same training areas. However, and one of the pieces down the bottom is, or further on with the differences is, the soldier versus client different, and for soldiers it's mandatory. I dare say a lot of clients it's more voluntary, and so we're not as we're potentially not as worried about everything being as easy for soldiers. So we're not as worried about access. We often have time to access more remote locations. And that it comes into one of the points down the bottom in terms of the conduct of activities is that, I know, for instance, Raging Thunder up on the Tully, they use that river because it's such good access. It's a clean run from top to bottom. We kind of often love a good river with a good portage. We don't mind making soldiers carry heavy rafts, and that can be just as good a part of the activity as doing a really massive portage as it is to actually put them down a big rapid. They'll find it more challenging. They'll bicker at each other more, and it'll give us way more debrief points if it's a teamwork activity than just going off big drops. So we kind of like it to be super challenging. I did one recently at Baroomba Rocks in the last few weeks, and the plan for the activity was abseil down, climb up like a grade 9, and because of the rain, we could only abseil down the 170 meter abseil, and then walk them up the descent track. And in the wet and all the rest of it, and the descent track, from the bottom almost just looks like a cliff. It was actually a really good activity and a really challenging activity, and was probably actually the best part of it. That and the traverse line in was the part that got them, not the 170 meter abseil. The traverse line was just a bit rude, and went in all the not easy to walk places. And on wet rock and whatnot, it had them thinking from the start. So it's not the obvious activity that we often go for. It's the other aspects that make it really hard. So it doesn't have to be a perfect client experience for us. It's about keeping the objectives in mind. And if that's to facilitate them to be able to deal with fear and stress, then we're going to put them in situations where they feel pretty uncomfortable and don't want to be there. So yeah, that we may use some other training areas that mightn't be go-tos for the rest of the industry. In terms of the disciplines, yeah. So I don't think the military is not using anything that you're not. These are all disciplines that are used there. It's just how we use them. But there's nothing crazy that the military's invented that wasn't out in the outdoor industry first. It's just we've taken them and applied them to achieve the objectives. In terms of risk, like it's same risk. Like there's the same risks in all outdoor activities as we're facing. Sometimes when you get into more remote areas, then they're more prevalent. But it's the same sort of risk management. I've spoken against that mandatory versus voluntary. Yeah, we don't always have willing participants, but the tagline used is it's not challenge by choice, it's just challenge. And so they will be made to turn up and that they need to complete the activity, and a fair bit of work obviously goes into dealing with that. It's not relied upon though. That it requires a pretty high degree of facilitation, I think, by some pretty good staff. To really get people through stuff that they did not sign up for and they did not want to be there. It's in terms of similarities there, it's still participant focused. So even though they're not always willing to be there, or they haven't volunteered, like focusing on a client, the outcome of the activity is absolutely focused on the participants within the military context. It's about getting them ready for battle and providing them with the tools that they need. The same way as it's about making clients or school students have a good experience. Planning similar, coordination similar. I think. The considerations for it are similar, and it is similar in terms of it's done in a relaxed environment. I use the term it's all relative there. I bet people love coming out of the office into the relaxed environment on recreational activities and education programs. Despite the fact that we're making them be there, it is still a relaxed environment. So generally, all the instructors, etc., or guides and instructors will remove rank. And it'll be first name basis. It's an adult learning environment, and it's working through problems together, which is probably a bit different to other military aspects where it's rank, it's orders, etc. So people do come on military adventurous training activities, and it's probably the most relaxed environment that they'll enjoy while serving. In terms of the differences where I've spoken about the ones I haven't spoken about, their aim and purpose, I think I've kind of covered that. Facilitation style. So this comes back to, mandatory versus voluntary. I have no doubt that a lot of you will use the same facilitation techniques or coaching methods. We've probably just got a few up our sleeve that we can get away with being in the military, and some of them can be a little bit stronger, I guess. So quite an effective one in the military is actually really calling somebody out for not being a team player, because they hate it. Because most people that join the military absolutely they will die for each other. So they're absolutely team players, and if you call them out for not doing that, then chances are they'll end up going over the cliff pretty quickly. It's one of the most offensive things I think you could say to them. So, so we can go down those lines, which in other environments may not be as palatable as we can use, but it sets a great debrief up later. And then I've spoken about sort of how we use activities, and we're okay as long as we're not going down the hypothermia side of things. People getting wet and cold and carrying heavy things and whatnot is kind of all part of it for us. So this is, I guess, I grabbed this because I've been looking at it the same day that I was chucking together this presentation after some conversations with Hugh, and I'm in the process myself of looking at what skills are transferable into the outdoor leadership space. I'll talk down the core units initially, and as you can see, I've just set up the traffic light system there. All these core units are pretty much addressed by military personnel, provided they have done their initial junior leadership course, or they will have at least addressed it in some way, shape or form, know how to do it. So by virtue of having done an initial junior leadership course or going through the officer program at RMC Duntroon, they know how to maintain work health and safety. They've done much more advanced communications training than an ICOM radio. They will, they'll be prevalent with UHF, probably HF, probably SATCOM. They're trained to operate in remote areas of Afghanistan and Southeast Asia, etc. Minimise environmental impact is also preparation for part of our field training. These people are spending probably initially, when they get through their ab initio training, their initial training, 4 to 6 months out a year out in a field environment. Planning, identifying hazards. That for outdoor recreation activities, that won't be covered prior to getting to a course. But conduct search and rescue, facilitate groups. Most of this is done. I dare say there's a few differences with address client needs compared, based on what I've told you about the differences. I'd probably be looking to test their ability to test and adjust that to a client as opposed to a soldier that has to be there. I think there's some different considerations that they'd need to learn, but they do understand about catering to somebody's needs on an activity, and coordinating emergency response and maintaining equipment. So most of that is covered by anyone in the military, and that's probably recognised by, it's not in outdoor leadership, but as long as you've done those leadership courses, and a leadership course in the military, they actually have a recognition program for a certificate for or diploma in leadership, not outdoor leadership, just leadership, leadership and management, sorry, which I'm sure you know is pretty similar core units. It's just attaching those outdoor ones, which is exactly what we then do, or the military does, when they run their courses, is they basically tick the rest off as, yep, they've done it elsewhere, and they just grab the ones there like facilitate groups and, maintain equipment for activities, etc. They'll grab them and take them to and put them into the Unit Adventurous Training Leader roping and climbing courses and the Adventure Training Leader instructor courses. So then if we look at the personnel now more significantly that have been through Adventurous Training Wing, and I just grabbed the abseiling elective units because I'm a roping climber. All those are exactly aligned to the courses that the military runs. So I'd be pretty confident that anyone that's maintained their qualification and experience should be able to come out to an RTO and demonstrate everything that's on that right-hand side if they were qualified in abseiling. It's just pretty straightforward, because that's how the military used to be actually issue qualifications under their RTO status, but then they ended up doing away with that, but the courses remain mapped to it, and they basically kept up. So that's kind of my view. If somebody had been in the military, done a roping climbing course, for instance, through the military, they would turn up being pretty well aligned to everything in a Cert 4 outdoor leadership with those electives, mainly finalise operation of outdoor recreation activities and probably address client needs. And then you need to drill down further to see if there's any gaps. And as you're aware, there's generally going to be some sort of assessment or small piece of gap training. But coming back to Laurie's point at the start in terms of a skill shortage and whatnot, and the need to get qualifications. Me personally, going through this, I'd like to see that the process isn't too laborious, because there's a fair sink up here, and there's a workforce of people that may be looking for a sea change or whatever it is, that'd be quite useful. And I guess just to, this is a look at a certification. In terms of what defence personnel bring, if you look at the defence values or the old army values, like these are loyal people who are specialised in leadership and management of soldiers in some of the toughest environments in the world, and just on their values basis and their work ethic and ability to cope with some of the most complex, terrifying situations imaginable, I would consider them a valuable asset in a variety of workspaces out of the military. So that's worth factoring into, and not just comparing units and qualifications on paper. That's all I've got. I've spoken enough. Sorry if that was too long, but please hit me up now with any questions.
That was great, Dan. Thanks for that.
Dan.
Pleasure.
It's interesting, even some of your differences chart. I think there's a lot of similarities in there as well. Perhaps there's sort of a common thing that splits off in two ways. So the addressing client needs, it strikes me that a good guide, whether they're in a military context or a civvy context, has that same focus on their client. They're seeing how their client's doing. They see what their client needs, and whether they're probably even using the same skills on Civvy Street, maybe to make them feel more comfortable, and perhaps in defence, maybe to make them feel less comfortable, depending on what sort of trying to. But there's so much shared skill and experience there.
There absolutely is, and I found myself when I just threw that table together. I started off with training areas in both columns, and I kept going down, and I almost did that, Hugh. I was almost just like, am I just going to put everything in both columns here? I was like, it's going to be a pretty useless table. And because I was asked to look at similarities and differences, I was like, I better make some distinguishing piece. But yeah, absolutely. I think there's heaps of shared ground. It just comes down to the activity objective and then planning it to meet that, and then how you facilitate that. And I think the same thing can be done elsewhere. It just comes down to activity design and what the objective is, but the skills are all there.
Yeah, look, I agree with you guys. I mean, having been in both camps and this camp for a long while. Oops, am I talking? Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I mean, when I did my adventurous activities with the diving and kayaking and abseiling and climbing with the Army, of course, I was doing SAS training, which actually was for carrying a gun and using the skill in battle. So, but having seen adventurous training happen in the Army since, it's very similar to what we do in much of the outdoors. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of there'd be a lot of good experienced people that are leaving the military that would settle into this world, the new world here, quite easily.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Has anyone else got a question for Dan or any comments they'd like to add?
I've got a handful of them, but I don't want to speak over the top of everyone else. So,
well, go for it, Hugh. Start it off.
Yeah, I was going to ask Dan about your experiences trying to transfer those skills, using some sort of recognition of prior learning or experience, I imagine, into Civi quals, and if that's been an easy one or an agonizing one or all of the above.
So I don't know yet. I think I guess me personally, I literally got an email back from back this morning that it's kind of being assessed. Like, I've sent through a bunch of proofs and whatnot, and we'll see what it looks like. I think at this stage it'll basically look like I don't think I'm going to need any gap training as such. It'll just be assessment. And that, I guess that was the point of the slide there, is I don't think they're missing something. They're not missing, abseiling on multi-pitch or search and rescue. Like, they've been trained in it. So it's a case of just needing the assessment so that an RTO can is satisfied to put a signature to it. And I don't think there's any avoiding that. Like, I don't think anyone expects a bit of paper, somebody to sign a bit of paper having never seen them.
That wouldn't be desirable at all. Yeah.
So that's not the expectation. I think anyone coming out would just be disappointed if they had to do all the training again to then prove that they were competent. So I think the expectation, I guess, is being able to skip to that assessment phase and prove that the skills are transferable and whatnot. And that's something that I think is reasonable and fair and required. Because some people will have used their qualification a lot, and some will have used it minimally. So that currency piece absolutely needs to be verified. I do know others that have found it pretty painless, pretty similar process in terms of just going through an assessment piece, and it's been able to be seen that they can do it, etc. And they've got the evidence there. I think the military is making it easier at the moment with recognising formally, not just for their needs, but recognising formally, particularly for transitioning personnel, the Cert 4 in outdoor leadership. In leadership and management. So then that just, as opposed to just going, well, we know we've trained them to that standard, they're actually giving people a piece of paper to say that they're trained to that standard, which I assume has to help an RTO when they're looking at qualifications and what sort of gap training they need.
Is there value, do you think, in a... Sorry, Dave.
I might add that on the assessment thing, Dan, if you went and did your Cert 3 or Cert 4 or did your assessment, and then you came and worked for me, I'd reassess you. So people are going to go through assessments. Yeah, nobody just says, they've got a Cert 3, I'll accept that. you would have to be assessed on each of the activities by a good provider before they'd let you run an activity anyway. So we're continually assessing ourselves, which is part of the ongoing training management process.
Absolutely.
That's that currency piece that you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you know, Dave, like, most activities in the military will start with a very similar thing, because they will draw in UATLs, like guides from all over Australia, and some you may have worked with, some you may not have, and so you'll probably get in the day prior and bang through your complex vertical rescues and basically hit all the hardest stuff to make sure that everyone's actually competent and current and all the rest of it. So it's a very similar process. I think it's just if people get out and they want to get into this space, they're just looking for, how do I get that ticket to play, I guess, being a Cert 3, Cert 4, and, advanced first aid, despite the fact that they've got military first aid, they've got care of a battle casualty, they can keep somebody alive with a punctured lung, and 2 legs missing, but they need to get these tick boxes as such, to then be able to turn up to an organisation and then be reassessed, as Dave says. They're looking for that, how to navigate that process as well. And so I guess if there's organisations out there that can make it easy to navigate as to what they need and minimise the training, not the assessment, but minimise the training side of it, I think it'd be beneficial.
Is there?
Well, I mean, when we wrote the adventure activity standards, if you read those, it's all about competence and experience. Yeah. So you don't actually need a qualification for most things you do, depending on what an organisation might require. But many organisations will just have competence and experience.
Yep.
Is there value in having a more, I guess, not a more formal pathway, but a more normalised pathway? Is that something that, if peak bodies like Outdoors New South Wales could work with RTOs and could work with Defence, is that something that, is a good pathway for people leaving Defence to be able to kind of have a soft transition into sort of civilian workforce?
Yeah, quite potentially, I think. And so, like, Defence does transition seminars, right? And there's other pathways, like in other industries, that they present on how to go about it. And so I think there are opportunities there to make it clear as to what the pathway is. And I've even, literally last week, I've been having a Google to find out what the current qualifications are. And, a lot of stuff's not up to date. Like, the qualifications vary as to what site you go to. You think you found the latest one, and then you find it, you realise it's expired, and you find the newer one. And I was just like, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy no matter where I went.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a comment in the chat section from Rob, wondering about a link to Buddy Up. You might have to dumb it down a bit for us, Rob, if anyone's not familiar with Buddy Up.
Oh, Buddy Up's just a PSTD group that get together and support ex-military. I don't know, is that, people know that? People know of that?
I wasn't tracking.
Okay. It's a support group Australia-wide, and they have chapters probably in the main cities, but I know I've got one in the mid-coast. It's just started up. They've only got about 10 members, but yeah, it's for ex-military that have got out after the time, and they're just a support group, but obviously have the skills that they have had from coming out. But I'll talk to the local chapter and see what they know about it, but am interested.
Yeah, good. Any others?
Any last questions before we finish off in a few minutes?
What else you got here?
I was just going to ask if, so for those that are wondering why I'm been quite so. I trained a little bit for defence early on as a civilian instructor. But I wondered if you might talk for a minute or two about that really intensive sort of training block that the guides or UATLs, unit adventurous training leaders get. So they get sort of like a month or 6 weeks of just
okay.
on site.
Yeah, and I guess I assume, was it a bit of a surprise to you, Hugh, that we trained them in 26 days?
I'd been well briefed, so it wasn't. Yeah.
So and that'll make some things link up. So that'll be good. So yeah, we train a guide in roping and climbing, which includes single pitch, multi pitch, artificial and natural services up and down. So climbing and abseiling, and all the vertical rescue stuff in 26 days, as well as how to facilitate an activity. How can we do that? So a lot of the stuff there, I come back to the core units in outdoor leadership, they've already done. So they already can operate in a field environment. They can already lead and manage people. They can already use a full suite of comms equipment. They've already done first aid. So hopefully you get that picture that that's all prerequisites to turn up to that 26-day course. Yep. What they are lacking is that facilitation component in an outdoor environment and planning and conducting a adventurous training activity. So the few pieces from that aren't covered, we cover usually up front, and then we put them into the more technical aspects. The other reason we can do that in that time is because we don't have to knock soldiers off. So basically, we can make them work quite late, and then they will spend time in the evening doing classroom work. We can get them up quite early. So yeah, it's sort of
they're not 8-hour days.
Yeah, they're not 8-hour days. They're pretty solid, and they're very. And you know, as Hugh's getting at, if you think, and this is where I have very little sympathy for them though, because if you think the students are doing it tough, the instructors on those courses have another couple of hours work, probably either side in the morning and the evening, either rigging or prepping lessons or, you know, refurbing. So there's a lot of marking assessments and whatnot. They're a big course from an instructor point of view, participant as well. But yeah, the instructors, earn your money, hey Hugh.
Yeah. I mean, they're rewarding in more ways than just being financial. You know, to see people go from some of them never tying a figure of 8 to being extremely competent guides at the end of that period's pretty all right. Yeah. And it's awesome, and it's awesome seeing. You know, generally there's an example activity, so the instructors will run and put all the students through a activity at the start. To give them an example and probably expose them to some pretty interesting situations and get those the fear and stress reactions from them. And then I think, the rewarding part, Hugh, is then knowing that they then have an appreciation for that feeling is then facilitating. They get the assessment phase for that is we find them, 30 odd participants from around Army, and then they facilitate an adventurous training activity for their final 3 days, and watching them come up and do the planning and conduct of that activity and facilitate people through a situation that, 24 days earlier they were very uncomfortable in, is pretty rewarding.
Fantastic. All right, thank you, Dan. Is there anything else before we wrap? We're just over 11 now, so want a final say? No,
thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and happy if yourself, Leslie, or Hugh wants to share my details to anyone that wants to follow up with a question or talk about anything further or get any more information.
Be great. Thanks so much, Dan. It was wonderful to have you as a guest. I really enjoyed everything that you presented today, and I appreciate it. So thanks for that. And hopefully we can chat again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.